Steve Williams is here with me today. He's a leader and visionary and business developer in the agricultural industry, and he continues to develop new innovative changes to farming and ranching, including some big developments happening now connected with El Salvador. So going back through the years, he ran his own 600 plus acre certified organic farm for decades. It included both beef and dairy cattle. He co-founded an organic processing and marketing company. It was called Naturally Iowa. It's been bought out and has evolved. It's now known as Totally Green Incorporated. It helped build some of the first dairy in the world that used completely compostable corn plastic bottles in its products and trying to be very green and sustainable. It's grown into a multi-million-dollar publicly traded company. He earned his bachelor's degree in management from Iowa State University. He's been the governor of Iowa's Food Policy Council. He's worked with the Iowa Department of Agriculture on Organic Standards Board. He was a founding board member of the Iowa Organic Association. Lots of resume we could get into. And he's run his own business as well, which we could talk about as well, soil supplements and healthy soil additives. Thank you for joining me this morning, Steve. It's been looking forward to having you.
Hey, thanks, Fritz. Yeah, it's an honor to be here. I'm excited that Tom got to speak with you. He's been out there leading. Obviously, Slim's been our leader for a long time, but I've glad to be part of that team. And yeah, you know, when you're in an audience and somebody starts to read someone's bio, you kind of go, oh, how long is this going to take? And so then you were reading mine. I was kind of like, oh, I'm that guy that, you know, and that was a while ago. And those are all great things. And they're all very, very relevant. We can get into that. But I think the proudest thing that I've accomplished was that I was a fifth generation family farmer and still involved with our family farm in Iowa and learned a lot from that. And as you mentioned, I went to Iowa State a long time ago. My dad and grandfather went there, and it was interesting to talk about this progression. When my grandfather went there, would have been in the 30s, 20s. He got an animal husbandry degree. And so you think about that term husbandry, I'm kind of like Slim. I'll give you some history. You know, that was a biblical term around how we steward the livestock, which is something that God commanded us to do. By the time my dad got there in the late 40s, it was called animal science. So if you're kind of seeing my point, the progression of the quote unquote science is the way to go. And by the time I was ready to go to Iowa State, really didn't think I was going to go anywhere else. And it was and still is considered a premier, ag school. I wanted to get a business degree, which I did. I got an MIS degree because I saw some opportunities to look at bringing computer technology into agriculture. But it was just interesting to watch that progression of how those, unfortunately, they had the charge in the land grant university to really help steward the land, steward the cattle. And then what it's become now, it's very siloed out. By that, I mean, there's an agronomy department, there's a animal livestock department, and the two departments don't even communicate, which is ridiculous. It's kind of like what we've done in medicine, now today. You don't go to see a general doctor, which is what we've done for centuries. So somebody could look you in the eye, touch you, take your pulse and say, how you doing? What's going on with your life? They're all like specialists, right? And so there's no, I know I'm getting a little bit off on the rabbit trail, but it speaks to it all because there's no systems approach to anything we do anymore. And that's why things are so broken.
Is that, when I think about the fiat system, fiat money, fiat driving everything, is that because of sort of focuses in what makes money and what's for business versus systemic symbiotic relationships on the supply chain and the food and the farmers and the customers? Is it because of the money?
Sure it is. And let's just talk about the real simple one. I mean, a cow really is God's greatest gift to mankind. And I say that not flippantly, but it's very true. When here's this animal that can go out and graze grass or forages that hardly any animal can survive on. I mean, obviously there's other ruminants that can do that, but here she puts her head down, does her own thing, eats, all day long, stops, chews her cud because she has this digestive system. And then guess what she produces? We all know that she produces meat and milk, but what comes out the back end of her is fertilizer for the land. Well, if we separate that and we put all those cows in a lot on concrete and have to build that infrastructure and build all that capital intensive system, use fossil fuels to haul all of her feed to her, and then her fertilizer now is called a waste. It's a problem. Well, it was never a problem for centuries. My family, all that fertilizer was used on our farm. We had hogs that they were somewhat penned up, and that manure was captured and composted, and then that went back out on our crop fields. But you see my point, when we separated those things at the university level and said, oh, let's go for higher yielding corn, and guess how we do that? We do it with synthetic inputs. And so we used this fertilizer,
Right.
which started after the World War II, because we had all this nitrogen and phosphorus left over, and it was cheap available fertilizer. And then when you start going down that road, then it produces other challenges. And so the weeds come along. Well, guess what? The guy raises his hand and go, oh, I have a herbicide. I have a fix for that, right? And you're starting to see the cycle. I call it the cycle of death. So we've gone down this road. And so, yes, back to your point, the fiat system helped drive it.
It's science.
Yeah, trust the science, right? But it is, what's great now in this environmental movement. I've always been an environmentalist. I'm not an environmental activist. I'm an active environmentalist. By that I mean the cows are the best land tool. Slim uses that term. It's a great tool. The cows, all livestock, are great land tools because they produce this cycle of life on a farm. And so animals are essential to any farm. You can't separate them. And that's what we've tried to do for the last several decades. And we've come up with this intensive row crop agriculture, monoculture, monocropping. And that's it becomes very problematic. It has been, because it's you push on one part of the equation to drive up yield. Well, then all these other things.
Oh, you're still there.
Sorry about that. Technical difficulty.
I heard an interesting thing years ago talking about fertilizer, is that World War II, the processes that generated dynamite and TNT and bombs and all this stuff.
Yep.
There were derivative products, waste products that we didn't have a market in the bombs the same way after a war, and we'd shifted on to nuclear and stuff. But there was a tremendous amount of nitrogen type of byproduct, industrial byproduct. And there was almost a question of like, what do we do with all this nitrogen? It greens stuff up. It was its own wartime, post-war economy that's like, hey, let's make stuff out of this byproduct.
Right. No, I mentioned that, and that was one of my questions I used to ask when I would give talks to farmers. I said, when did we start using synthetic fertilizer? And most people had an idea, but they didn't know why. And they were phosphorus, which is now very flammable and very volatile. It was those phosphorus and nitrogen are two ingredients that were used in a lot of these bombs. And so we had mountains of this stuff laying around, and it was very cheap. And it was kind of like the drug addict. When I was growing up, we could fertilize our pastures for $5 to $8 an acre. Now it's, hundreds of dollars an acre. And so they get you hooked on those fertilizers thinking, well, yeah, this is cheap and it's easy and it works. But it's that death by 1,000 nicks, Fritz, scenario. Even Roundup, people are going to shoot arrows at me or threaten me today when I say this, but one application of Roundup isn't bad. It's that continuous, repeated, over application. And then I saw that when I was doing my soil business. I started out doing some work in California, and I could see where they were multiple years ahead of us and what was happening with over application of Roundup, because in those orchards, in order to keep the orchard floors clean and the almonds and the high intensive nut productions, they were putting Roundup on 3 to 5 to 6 times a year, because they didn't want any grass to grow so that they could go in and harvest the nuts. You follow me? And so they started to have problems long before we did in the Midwest, because we were only putting it on once or maybe twice a year. And so it's this continual application effect that starts to drive down soil biology. And then it's not just one thing. It's because the opposition will pick at it and go, oh, I can do this one thing and it doesn't affect it. But it's when you start multiplying the synthetic fertilizers, the herbicides, the pesticides. And then my biologist I work with, when I would tell him about fungicides, he would literally twitch, because he said, oh my God, that's like dropping a nuclear bomb in the soil, because it literally just wipes out all biology in the soil. So, we've done this to ourselves, but it's a progression, right?
Yeah. And it's like the industrialization of agriculture and that wartime mindset of, hey, we got science, we got all this stuff, phosphorus and nitrogen, and we're just going to apply these same kind of logics in a sciencey way.
Yeah.
And but it was just a sledgehammer to organic processes that were kind of just previously natural. You could go
Yeah.
down a
Yeah.
rabbit trail with post-war things about fluoride as well, but
Right.
regardless, industrial chemicals. Hey, we got a bunch of the stuff. We have processes to make them. Let's just keep that tap running.
Right.
And for reasons, it greens stuff up and helps you.
Right.
And then
Yep.
then it's this trap. You got the trap of fertilizers, and then you got weeds, and now you got we got pesticides, and all the things. And so then you're in this cycle, and that's affected food supply chains, big agro, and it's been very, very hard on small time ranchers, the government subsidies, the food bills, and all this stuff where you can
Sure.
follow the money basically.
Right.
There's so much to get into there about that. We're going to get into it. I wanted to before we get too far in a lot of interesting stuff, tell me first how you met Texas Slim and kind of that pivot you made with the beef initiative. I don't want to forget about that.
Oh, no, this is a great question. This is why I got led to you, right? So I work with a company called Better Fed Foods out of Kansas. I helped them develop a product using algae and my microbes for the soil. And so they were doing sponsoring a Bitcoin cattleman's feast, and this guy named Texas Slim was there, and it was at a beautiful place in Virginia called Ginger Hill Angus Ranch, and it's owned and operated by Dr. Brooke Miller, who's a family doctor, neighbor of Dr. Robert Malone, some people everybody knows about. So
yeah, totally.
Brooke and his wife have this great ranch. He's a family doctor who took a stand during COVID for health and sovereignty. Well, he happens to be a great cattle producer as well, and he's a customer of ours with Better Fed Foods. And so they were having this event, and lo and behold, Tom was there too, but I never met him. That's funny, but it was 3 years ago, and Slim was putting on this cattleman's feast, and we chose to sponsor the event. And so I got in early. Slim was there early. I'll never forget it. We're up sitting on this beautiful back porch of Brooke's beautiful ranch, and here's Slim up there on the porch. And I thought, who is this guy? I need to meet him. And I talked to him, and I knew, he was a Bitcoiner. I'd read about him and saw that. And I just started down that Bitcoin trail during COVID when I had a little extra time. And I was very intrigued by that interface between Bitcoin and fiat and how that affects and could affect and impact livestock agriculture. And so we met, and right away, it's like that line from Forrest Gump. It's like peas and carrots. We just hit it off and just had a meeting of the mind. And I'm like, I want to hang with this dude. And literally, a week or two later, I was at an event he did in Arkansas. And then he tells this story. I asked him on that porch, I said, Slim, what do you need? And he goes, well, I really need a truck. And I thought, oh, really? Okay. And so
just need a truck.
2 weeks, well, he'd worn out his truck, right? He'd been around the country multiple times. And so I went back to Bernie Hansen, our founder, and I said, hey, I think this guy's real. He needs a truck. Can we get him a truck? And 2 weeks later, we had a new Dodge sitting in his driveway that he still drives today, just to help him out because he's got a calling. And we saw that right away. And then, obviously that's years ago. Fast forward, just continue to work closer and closer with Slim. About 10 months ago, the Bitcoin conference in Vegas, I went out there representing him. We started to work on a cow share program, and then just worked closer and closer and closer with him pretty much full time since then. And then he and I were the ones that went to El Salvador first back in August, and here it has been, 6 months. And we've moved from first time to El Salvador, all because of Bitcoiners, getting led to Max and Stacy, getting led to the Ministry of Agriculture, putting this profound project in front of them about, hey, let's help you guys build a new generational heritage breed of cattle. And they're like, we love it. How do we do it? Here we are a few months later, and we've got a signed contract with them. So
that's awesome. And Slim's got his, you can order his Slim cuts and get good beef delivered. He brought some to El Salvador to eat when, back in January, he was down there. I saw him. That's where I first saw him in person, was at the Golf Invitational.
Right. I was there. Right. Yep.
With Tom. I must have seen you, but I didn't know who you were.
Me saying vice versa. Yeah. It's all good.
Yeah. I knew Tom. And so I got to talking with Tom again. So I had him on. I'd love to have Slim on here too, but yeah, Slim is the great presenter, represents the brand. Now in Vegas, I heard something about meat sticks. Did you have some meat sticks or something you brought to the conference there? Or? Yeah,
so we work with several ranchers. I'm going out to Reminisce Ranch in Montana 2 weeks from yesterday. Brian Massard has a bull sale every year on his ranch, and he was always has been a leader and profound thinker around the beef industry, but he had a podcast with Nicole Shanahan a little over a year ago that went viral, teaching her in a very respectful way about why saturated fat is good for you. You know, so many people think that fat, they demonize fat. And so Brian's a thought leader in that aspect. So yeah, I've been going out there. Anyway, Brian is the one who created this fantastic all beef stick. And again, it's got fat in it, which is so important for us as you learn and you understand why that's important. So yeah, we're doing co-branding. I make that point because, you know, we're not going to reinvent all these processes, all these wheels, if you will. And we look for people that are doing it good, you know, and then we partner with them. And so what we can bring to Brian is we can bring market access, capital through Bitcoiners, and just some ways to scale it right, and not
Awesome.
not take over his business. And you know, there's all these, when you start to talk to capital people, you know, all these nefarious energies come to light. Oh, well, I'm going to take him over, you know, whatever. It's not a win-win, but we try to create these win-win-wins, right?
Yeah, and that's, you know, I titled the video about how farmers and ranchers, they need capital.
Right.
There's so many strings attached. I mean, there can be good government standards to have, and there are strings attached, and there can be money that's good to take, but it can also hook you into funnels that force you to maybe not do business the way you'd like to, or put pressures on you. You know, farmers and ranchers, they can be very land rich, but capital poor.
Exactly.
And so then there's that incentive to take subsidies, and then you're kind of hooked in this cycle of, you know, the government industry. And you've worked for and in government, public sector, plenty, the organic stuff, which we can get into.
Yeah.
What direction the organics labeling and stuff has gone, but what we're trying to do is help inject capital into ranchers and farmers to create a coalition where people can source their food, support a food chain and supply chain, and decentralize that system. So it's not so like owned by like 4 companies.
Absolutely. Yeah. And just a point of reference, I didn't work for the government. I mean, you saw some things, but yeah, with the Organic Association, those were certainly public facing processes and organizations, but yeah, primarily tried to stay as far away from that as I could. But sometimes you kind of have to go into those arenas to make an impact. But I think Tom said it well the other day. I can't really think of anything that the government's done well enough that we need to duplicate. but your point is right that there's these processes we go through, and back to when I met Slim, and back to when I started looking at Bitcoin, I really like to study these interfaces between technology and the real world. And I saw the Bitcoin ethos and the Bitcoin, all the models that it presents, that I'm still learning how much that should and could impact agriculture and food systems, right? And so I have this dream, and now it's starting to come to fruition with Slim and a lot of people's help, is that we can help each other. And that's the perfect scenario where the cattle producers obviously bring good food, the best nutritionally dense protein there is in the world. The Bitcoiners have their systems, sovereignty, this immutable supply chain with the blockchain, and they have, you know, this capital resource. And that's the thing we've been talking about a lot, is challenging both sides, not just, you know, one or the other, but challenging the Bitcoiners. You know, you can't eat your Bitcoin. What are you going to do with it? And Tom's really good at that. He knows those guys, and he's as anybody that knows him, I mean, he's the most gracious guy, nicest guy I've ever met. And he has a great way of just challenging people in a good way, right? And then on the other side, in my world, with the ranchers, carefully, cautiously, with respect, challenging them to be like, hey, how's this shit show that we're in? How's that working for you? It's not, right? I mean, there might be a few of them that have survived because of family capital, or you know, they're whatever. But the point is, by and large, it's not working at all. And so they're in this debt system that is just a spiral. Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, something to the effect of like 50 ranches a day go under. I mean, we're talking tens of thousands a year of longtime family ranches that go under because they might be land rich, but the business is a grind or hard or getting corrupted. And so trying to sustain that, now recently you went to the King Ranch, a big,
Yeah.
long time, established 1853,
Yeah.
big ranch. You're looking at herds down there. Now, is this is connected to looking at a herd that might go to El Salvador? Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. And so when we brought the delegation from El Salvador here in December and took them on the Texas Roadshow, if you will, we took them to a great steakhouse in Austin. We took them to a smaller processing plant, but I had targeted in the King Ranch as far as a place I wanted to take them. And they really rose to the occasion and provided a great private tour guide for us. And we spent an afternoon there. And honestly, it was my first time there. It's like, I want to use the word required reading, but everybody that grew up with any sense of ranching or cattle industry in America knows that the King Ranch was a leader. And in fact, they created the only breed of cattle that's ever been created in America. I guess there's been maybe a few others since then, but they created this breed called the Santa Gertrudis, which was a crossbred Brahma, which is a heat tolerant animal with a beef cow from Europe called the Shorthorn, and created their own breed. And they had the size and scale to do it, right? They have tens of thousands of cows. Well, fast forward to today, they're still operating as a working ranch. They still operate under those working ranch principles. They have some of the best quarter horses in the world. But the guy reminded us very respectfully that our horses only are here to work our cattle, so that's the kind of ethos that they bring. So when I was looking to source the cattle to go to El Salvador for this heritage breed of cattle, they already had risen to the top. And then just recently I was back down there to visit with them, and oh my goodness, when you have that, there is advantages to having scale. And I'll use this as an example. When they have 20,000 cows to start with, and they can start selecting with genetics, and now we have all these very interesting genetic EPDs that we can look at and take a blood sample, for example, and get 30 to 35 genetic traits on that animal. And so we can start to really apply some very cool technology on selection pressure. Well, guess what? You can move positively in the direction you want to with these genetics. And remember, their cows have to get up every day and eat this dry grass, live in the hot Texas summer, and produce a calf every year. Otherwise, they go to market. And so I love the fact that they're very real and they're very focused on that. And oh, by the way, they're interested in working with us and working with El Salvador because it's a profound project, but we get to have access to those good genetics. So long answer, but it's
Awesome.
exciting. It's super exciting.
Tell me the name of that breed again. It's a mix, but I didn't quite catch
it's called Santa Gertrudis, and it's something they came up with. Santa Gertrudis. Yeah, so it's a dark red hided animal that's developed and designed to be heat tolerant, but it brings some of the beef traits to that cow. So it started out as a crossbreed, and it was a very specific the way they bred it, so that it's a little bit of a challenge to create it. But that herd was created, oh gosh, I don't know the year, 100 years ago probably, and has continued to be a leader. And then now they're forwarding the genetics even farther and going back with another cross that we're working with. So they're always continuing to improve and adapt.
And with genetic science and artificial insemination and all the things you do well that way, you can maintain a good quality herd. So it's possible that breed is the breed that El Salvador might import and start the cattle in El Salvador. Yeah. Now, that's awesome to hear. And when I was in El Salvador, it was very clear. El Salvador is open for business, and they need it. They want it. They know what works. They don't want government to get in the way, even as you all going to El Salvador are thinking of what's best as well for El Salvador, the El Salvadoran people. They need their own local quality beef themselves first. Sure. And then with that as well comes the economy, the business, the money, and sustained citadels. I was talking with Tom about, with capital coming in, if there's Bitcoiners and stuff that just want a foot in the door, or maybe they want to get into that. It's not that you have to do all the work, but you can get into ranching. And so you might take the orange pill and you start to see the world differently, and you want to secure yourself financially. Okay, that's a step. Tom makes a point about doing something with that capital. Exactly. And then we all have to eat, and we want to eat healthy, and you're paying attention to that as well. So fundamentally, yes, there's the money, but another foundation really is that meat pill. It's
It is.
eat quality beef. Hey, help contribute, purchase from, or run a ranch.
Yep.
And El Salvador could be a great location for all these little ranches, medium, small, big,
Yeah.
that they want it.
Yeah, definitely. And that was something that Slim and I recognized early on and came up with the company and the name, the Texas Slim Land and Cattle Company, because that's what we're going to do there. And we actually, honestly, we have a list of people in El Salvador, mostly Bitcoiners that have heard about this and are clamoring to be part of it, and just be patient because we're building the models. But right now, as we speak, yeah, we have people working on that. We have people that are selecting land. There is land available to build these cattle ranches in El Salvador, and I think that's a great way for Bitcoiners to engage this, right? And because if you lined up 100 people, and even if all 100 of them wanted to be a rancher or raise their own beef, hardly any of them would know what the heck does that look like, right? And it usually requires a ton of capital. It requires a ton of skill. And so we're connecting these dots and saying, hey, we have tons of people in our organization that can bring expertise to those things, genetics, land management, all the above. And so we'll help you from, you could be just strictly an investor, you could be a landowner, or you could do, 3 of the 5 things, and we'll help fill in the gaps. We've had people with creative capital come to us and offer to help us even bridge the gap in some of these situations where the land needs to be improved. So, Fritz, it's exciting to be in El Salvador and the Bitcoin network. People are passionate about what they do. I'm a new guy to the Bitcoin space, but that's one thing I noticed and I saw right away is how educated these people are, how interested they are in understanding the truth. And quite honestly, it's pretty relatively easy to red pill a Bitcoiner because they've already opened up their minds enough to see, hey, this fiat system is screwed and we need to do something different. So we mentioned the food system, that it's broke, it takes them like a minute or 2 to go, oh, that makes sense. So they're very interested in it and excited about this. So, but it's so now what? I don't want to have, even at the end of our conversation, and we're already getting to these points, but it's one thing to talk about it, but how do we do something about it, right? That's what we're working on.
Yeah, when it comes to just the orange pill, there's a lot of talk you can have about how Bitcoin will change the world, but you got to go do something too. And what more tangible way to do something than the beef industry, ranching? Yeah. I mean, what a direct impact you can have, because it's fundamental to everything else. And it's not just a food source. We're talking about a whole layer upon layer of everything from, like you are well aware of, creating healthy, thick soil,
right.
Animals that feed on that, a sustainable system. And then, you've got the food, but then you've also got the economy. And there's the people of El Salvador, like you said, smart, happy, and purposeful, with pride in their country and what they want, but hardworking, good, hardworking, humble folks. So there are people that need and want that industry and the work to be done. And now I look at El Salvador's landscape wise, so just stereotypically comparing it to Texas, you got like big, flat, open plains, and your water sources are very different.
Oh yeah.
We could just touch upon perhaps the potential differences and challenges. Okay, you move a good herd to El Salvador. You're dealing with variously hills, perhaps. Sources of water being like rainfall, more moisture, perhaps less wells to tap into. Not that there aren't wells, but it might be water capture systems. But you start looking like the ranch has to be configured to the locale. Like, okay, this land is different. So
that's fair.
It's going to translate though pretty well though. Like you move a herd from Texas to El Salvador, they're going to they're going to adjust to the climate and be just fine in that regard. But could the environment have an impact on the breed? It'll just become more native to the land, basically.
Yeah, they'll adapt, and we're probably the biggest way that we will be bringing large macro changes to their cattle industry is we'll be using artificial insemination. So we'll just be importing the frozen semen to put in the cows that are there. And so that calf
Okay.
that's born is already going to be inside, El Salvador cow mama for 9-10 months
Oh,
with her genetics and dropped on the ground. So we are sending cattle from Texas. That's phase one. That's kind of our pilot, and those cattle will become a nucleus herd, if you will, a foundational herd for the country of El Salvador. But it's not a one-pronged approach, and then so we'll be sending. They're ready. We have a couple farmers we met last time. We were there just a month ago they're already AI in their cows, and they're like, oh, we can't wait to get the semen from your cattle from America to put in our cows and start that. In a couple of generations, we'll have cattle there that'll out of those cows, and so that'll be another way to impact. But yeah, the terrain's different. The site, we don't have enormous ranches. I mean, I come from Iowa. We don't have the 100,000-acre ranches like you do here in Texas, but it all fits, right? Because and I'm back to my business the last 14 years as a soil biology guy.
right.
That I'm a nerd. I take dirt home when I can from El Salvador and look at it because it all starts in the soil, and they have this beautiful minerally rich soil because of the volcanic atmosphere that's been there for centuries, and their biology has not been degraded, and so they're starting with this amazing plateau of inputs, and then we add the grass to that, add the cattle to that. So you are what you eats, and so we're going to be able to produce beef, world-class beef there, and we're not there to ride in and take from the land and export it. We're there to help those people feed themselves and be servant leaders, definitely first.
Oh
Yep.
yeah, they could be a huge, once they have their own beef and cattle foundation and they've
Yeah.
got their own sources of meat. I mean, there's going to be a large market. They'll be like worldwide a huge source
Yeah.
producer of quality meat.
Yeah.
And then through the beef initiative too, it's connecting quality beef and meat to this collective where
Right.
you're connecting supply chains. There's the beefmaps.com. Let's see. Oh, this
Yep.
is Texas Slim here.
Yep.
If you don't know Texas Slim, he's
Yeah.
a real icon of his own in the space. But I wanted to find beef maps. Here we go.
Yeah.
So
There you go. So yeah, go shake a rancher's hand, find somebody that you could go meet ideally. And they're all over the country. We even have some around the world that are certified, independent producers that we work with. And then, our latest acquisition that Slim acquired just recently was beef.com, which will be it's a profound platform and plan for what we're going to do to impact the entire world with beef. And so keep an eye on that.
yeah, that's another real thing. Texas Slim secured beef.com
Yeah.
because like Bill Gates owns science.com and other big industries own,
Right.
things like food.com and things like that. And so just having beef.com right now, you can enter your email and connect
Yep.
with when this goes live more, it's still getting developed. They're setting up the security and all that real carefully,
Right.
but you'll be able to connect with the beef initiative and other things globally in the beef industry right here. And
Exactly.
if you connect with your email, you'll get updates on what's going on. And then with the beef maps, you can find your local rancher and
Right.
connect with them. So
Yep.
and
Yeah. And then Texas Slim's Cuts is a way that you can, impact ranchers. We can ship beef from there. We can ship it from the beef maps through an independent producer as well. But yeah, see there on Texas Slims, we're going to be coming out with other products, tallow, beef sticks, things like that related, because we're adding value to all parts of that cow. And keep an eye on all of our places, but especially beef.com. We're going to be introducing some leather products because, again, that's just our hides, unfortunately, now get shipped to Brazil or China, for pennies on the dollar, and then come back. It's the silliest thing in the world. We have this, and they do it everywhere. We're in this outsourcing world that the globalists have taught us that this is good for you and this is the right thing for you to do, is to ship all your things out and then bring it back, and it's just ridiculous. And
oh yeah,
so the cow
well,
has all these wonderful things that be consuming. Who would imagine? Well, I would have, but tallow. This is a crazy story. I'll make it real short, but on the end of these hundreds of millions of dollar processing plants that process several thousand head of cattle a day, guess what? There's a biodiesel factory on the end of those beef plants turning tallow, which, they demonized fat, right? So they took them a while to demonize fat, put all this other crappy
I
seed oil
remember
in our
growing
food.
up like,
So
oh, fat's bad
yeah,
for you.
we have all this excess fat. So guess what they do? They turn it into biodiesel. Well, it only costs $23 a gallon to produce that biodiesel. That's not really economical, but it's subsidized. And since these big guys have thousands of gallons of tallow every day going through their plant, which is liquid gold, it's wasted. And so here we come.
What a waste.
Thank God. Yeah. Thank God for the consumers and for the real science that finally teaches people that tallow is good for you. In fact, it's the best. Anyway, you can see my point. And so
Yeah.
we can now bring tallow, which was a byproduct or a waste. It's now one of the leading values of beef cattle. And so why not capture that value for the independent rancher and help them capture that? All these new products that get developed are always designed by somebody on purpose to create this profit chain that trickles down a little bit to the rancher, but we don't. We want to keep it with the rancher as much as we can.
Yeah, tallow is a very healthy oil to be using. It's very biologically compatible, and whether it's for food, which your body needs and craves, that was another thing. Like, oh, cholesterol's bad. Oh, well, there's good and bad cholesterol. All these things around diet over the years, where I grew up in the 80s into the 90s, it was just told to me that fat is bad. Fat,
right?
And so you have like dairies and meat type products that are non-fat or low fat.
Oh,
it's like, so
terrible.
What is it? Yeah, terrible. And your body doesn't get the nutrients, the macros it needs that way. And then they've also industrialized the seed oils, obviously, but like you mentioned, biofuels, corn and soy and stuff made to create biodiesel fuel stuff, which has to be subsidized, completely not economical. You're growing all this stuff to like waste the food and make inefficient biodiesel out of the product and the expense. And then you'll have byproduct kind of degraded food stuff that is fed to cattle, corn and soy and stuff. So, when it comes to, your experience in the organic world, touching back on work on the boards for, certifications for the organic labels, or
right.
We'll also see labels on food that's like grass fed.
Right.
Now, directionally it's correct, but I've heard Texas Slim say, you can go to the store and see beef or, ground beef, whatever, and it'll say organic or it'll say grass fed, but that doesn't necessarily mean quality, right?
Right. That's exactly right. We don't know the source of that grass. We don't know the organic standards. I mean, you could look them up. So, that's sort of rhetorical, but the standards are very minimalized. When I started on the organic board for the state of Iowa, it was 4 or 5 of us organic farmers in the room, practically bringing ideas and solutions. And, we wanted to put some standards behind this label, right? And then the state of Iowa had a standard. And then that's when I was involved with the organic dairy business. I recruited a guy to come and milk cows on my farm. I'd never done that, but then we built the dairy processing company. So we wanted to hang our flag on organically certified, but there were some larger dairies, doesn't matter where, out west a little bit farther, and they wanted their 3, 4, or 5,000 head dairy to be certified organic. Well, they couldn't have done it in the state of Iowa because our standard said you had to have pasture and you had to have so many acres of pasture. Well, their certifying agency, all they said was you have to have access to pasture, which is now where it's at too. All that means is it's kind of like the free range chickens that spend 99% of their time in this big barn, and then, oh, by the way, they have a side of the barn that has a little sunlight and fresh air that blows in, and the chickens have access to it. Same with these big dairies. Point is, they watered down the requirements and the standards. And
they could wander out there. They just don't.
Well, and guess who rode in as the savior? Well, the USDA said, well, we have to come in and standardize this organic label. Otherwise, it's going to be, because there were 20 or 30 of us doing organic standards. And so if somebody couldn't get their organic label over here, they would go to this other company who did it faster and cheaper and didn't have this high standards. And so, here comes the U.S. government. Well, let's put it under their banner. And even I was somewhat for that because the standards had gotten watered down. but their standards started at a pretty low bar. And so, yeah, so now, I mean, I think it means something, but it doesn't mean that much. And grass-fed, as Bernie Hansen says, and a lot of even organic soybeans, they get baptized on the boat on the way over from China, right? I mean, who knows if they're organic or not? Or the grass-fed beef comes in from who knows where. And I mean, there's even been guys who have bought cattle at a sale barn, for example, and then they sign an affidavit that says, oh, the time that these cattle were in my possession, they were grass-fed. Well, they might have been in his possession for a day. That's how ridiculous. Yeah,
right.
So they're quote grass-fed. That's BS. They're not grass-fed. So that's where you have to really know your cow. You know, there's all these KYC things, proof of stake, all these great terms that you Bitcoiners have that are true. And we can. Here's where it gets interesting, Fritz. We can test with science. Back to Better Fed Foods, they've tested over 10,000 samples of meat, milk, and eggs, all kinds of things, where we can test for the omega-3 level. The omega-3 is why people want to eat grass-fed beef and drink the grass-fed milk. It's because it's got a higher omega-3 level. That's why fish oil is good for you, because the wild-caught fish eat algae. So we have this algae product, that Better Fed Foods, that it's very economical, very practical, very healthy, that we feed to the cattle. And this has really changed things. So we can feed a little bit of that supplement, and we're working on getting some of that into the country of El Salvador. But we can feed this, it's called Grade O feed, to the cattle, and you can feed it to other animals as well. But on the cattle side, we can get that omega-3 into them year round. And then, oh, by the way, it helps the cattle perform better, which is great. But at the end of the day, we can test that sample of meat, and we can put an index on it and say, yes, this is certified omega-3 beef or milk or whatever. So that's where we use science for good, right? It can be beneficial to us.
Yeah, that's awesome. You did a lot of work with your other company on soil additives and stuff. And just going to betterfedfoods.com here real quick. I hadn't noticed that under sustainability, you've got algae there, which it's like, oh, okay. So you can
look at that algae farm. Yeah. And so Bernie coined the term, the company is Better Fed Foods, but underneath that it says better fed land, better fed animals, better fed people. So he's been a pioneer. I mean, to come up with that slogan 6-8 years ago. And so it starts with the land, and that's where I helped them add my microbial products to the algae. And so it's algae for the land, a different algae that we use for feed. And both of those algae products create a better environment for the example, for the landed plants. The algae helps not need as many synthetic inputs. It helps the plant soak up more sunlight, utilize water better. It's all about getting a healthy plant. When you have a healthy plant, it responds better. It doesn't require all these expensive inputs. And then we have a different algae product. It's both algae. They both do similar things, but the algae for the livestock feed, it's a very palatable, very affordable feed product that goes into those livestock feed. And the cattle, I talked to Bernie this week. He was talking about a ranch in Montana. So you talk about I'm getting into the beef terms, but people understand pregnancy rate is you want your cows to breed back every year. And it's hard, that cow's out there working and eating grass and having to have a baby every year. If they can get 80 or 85% of those cattle bred every year, that's great. And we've got customers that are getting 90 to 95% of those cattle rebred every year in these environments. And now that the cattle are so valuable, that's a huge input and a factor for them. So these are really good things to use.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think, when I think about all the work you're doing there, what people notice in the store, and we're sort of being trained about what type of food we're accustomed to seeing and how much we pay for it. And it seems more and more to me like we'll get some random, like if my wife randomly shops in the store and I tell her I'm eating more beef, I'm eating more meat,
right? And
she'll kind of, without a lot of clear directive, or using something like beefmaps.com or connecting with a local rancher, which we have around here, unless you do that extra work, you can buy ground beef at the store that's rando, or it may have a stamp of approval of some kind on there. But ground beef is becoming more and more like hot dog meat or pink slime something. It's not like it came from a cow or a few cows. Right. How it's sort of just aggregated in processing spots.
Absolutely.
Where it could be 100 cows, at least 30 cows, but it's also just the worst kind of leftover stuff.
Exactly. Yeah.
And they call it beef, like ground
Right.
beef, but it's
Right.
not hardly meat that was ground. It's entrails.
Oh, it can be whatever. It's like we farmers, we have this funny term. It's like chicken lips. You know, there's no lips on a chicken, but it's that term is used because they put all this crap in this food and call it ground chicken or ground beef. It can, because it can, by law, ground beef can contain a certain percent of bone and hair, and I mean it's just by, and then if you ask them, now why is that? Well, you know, they have some smart aleck science answer. Well, because, you know, well, no, I don't want any fucking bones or hair in my ground beef. So know where your cows come from.
Uh-huh.
And these large industrial processing facilities are, you know, I'm not, yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate they do it, but they're just meeting the standard. I'm not making excuses for them, but if they're allowed to put so much, it's even like the poultry that gets dragged through a water bath at the end of their process, and then you buy this chicken. Well, you're buying 5 or 8% water, and same with beef. You're buying stuff that, you know, you're not getting 100% beef, and so
Uh-huh.
know your cow, know where your beef comes from, have it tested that way through through the omega test, but primarily just know the source and trust it. And so, you know,
Eat
we're
a
offering
proper
those.
steak. Yeah.
Yeah, and you have to be careful about that, certainly. But and yeah, grass fed or organic can be somewhat better, but if the grass, for example, if the grass that cow's eaten it can be the most chemically intensively farmed grass in the entire world, and it can still qualify as grass fed because that's what that cow has to eat, but that doesn't mean it's good for you. That's kind of an example of
Mm.
just that minimal standards of the label. So I like to say, you know, you are what you eats, because it's very important what that grass has. And Slim had coined a term, and I think it's fantastic, is we're going to stop pricing beef by the pound and price it by the acre. And by that we mean, you know, where did that meat come from? What's the
Interesting.
nutritional profile of it, right? And I tell you what, El Salvador's got some amazing land. I mean, we were out digging around the last time. There's a video of me down with the farmer, you know, digging up some of this dirt, and it smells good. It's deep. I mean, it's as deep as the volcano. So it's, you know, it's got all this fantastic soil, and that's what comes into the plant, which the cow eats. That's why we all Brits have to take, I don't know how many billions of dollars the vitamin industry is now, because we can
Oh
eat.
yeah.
You know, we walk around, you go around, oh, Americans are starving. People laugh. Well, yeah, they're full bellies, but they're nutritionally starved, literally.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Weight.
unhealthy. We've never been this unhealthy. RFK talks about 60% of the people can't even pass a basic physical to get it in the military. Well, what's
Oh
up with
yeah.
that?
Yeah, the human herd has degraded, and
Yeah,
we're fattened up, but we're starving all the time because we're nutritionally deficient. And
sure.
that's where, you know, connecting to get your meat at beefmaps.com. You can find a local rancher to connect with there. And then additionally, Texas Slim posted a quick little deal here, beef.com, get signed up.
There you
So
go.
here we are.
Keep an eye. Yeah, keep an eye on that, folks, because that's where, I mean, there's multiple ways to get engaged, but if you really want to help a rancher, I mean, this is one of my huge pleas, and not plea out of any kind of desperation at all, but I mean desperation because you guys all need to know where your food supply is coming from. Get involved. We'll have opportunities for you to help save a rancher, literally, and that can look as simple as investing in a cow, like Tom mentioned, a cow share, all the way to, we'll have opportunities for you to help invest in a ranch. I mean, you know, let's
Yeah.
put our money where our mouth is and offer these creative financial solutions to people. And Bitcoiners have a lot to offer to the farmers and ranchers from a standpoint of just understanding financial sovereignty. And so there's going to be these good training and teaching exercises, you know, going both ways, certainly.
Yeah, it's having the right values. Bitcoiners
Yeah.
often have the right incentives, and then it's utilizing that to make an impact. I have this personal fantasy where I could, not to say retire, but if my escape hatch would be, because I grew up as a kid, I would work
Right.
on ranches and stuff, and I learned how to work and the work
Yeah.
ethic, and then connected to the land and managing the environments and the cows and the horses. But I loved it.
Yep.
You know, it's like someday I would love to participate or help out or
Yeah.
own a ranch.
Sure.
Heck, and
Sure.
if that was El Salvador, that'd be absolutely awesome.
Yeah.
Now on
Yeah.
the
We're gonna
yeah,
do
go
that.
ahead.
So keep track. Yeah. We'll have multiple opportunities for people to do that, whether you want to live there, retire there, spend part of your time there, be involved. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. And now on the regulatory guidance side of the government, I know there's this newer the food pyramid, the
Yeah.
website. This is the government collaboration between the
Right.
FDA and otherwise, but realfood.gov connected from FDA. They've got their new food pyramid. At least they're talking about here,
Right.
real food. What is real
Right.
food? They're promoting it really well. America is sick. All of this is
Right.
very good sounding. Here's the
Right.
legacy pyramid. I remember that. Eat your carbs, folks. Eat your
Oh
bread.
yeah. Oh yeah.
So that is changing here. They have a great website that is very interesting. It's just what we were talking about. So
Yep.
now when it comes to the new food pyramid, what do you think of this? Are things under the new leadership changing for the better, and are they authentic?
Great question. The thing that pops out, and I'm visual, so I see this thing right away, and I look at it pretty quickly. What the heck's a can of beans doing on the top? I mean,
That's true.
anyway, it'd be one thing if it was. I like the fresh broccoli and the other things a little bit, but that's what's in the center of your plate. You and I are what's in the center of your plate. It's a piece of protein and it's a piece of freaking steak, man, and
Yeah,
meat.
meat
That's
fits right
yeah,
here
yeah,
in the corner amongst
yeah.
cheese and chicken and pink slime and
Right, right.
salmon.
So yeah, they're heading in the right direction. I think we make incremental changes, and so I'm excited. I mean, I was as much when Bobby decided to run with Trump and what he's doing. I mean, I followed him. I've been in this deck. We started organic farming in '98. Kennedy he started something called the Waterkeepers Alliance. He's been in this fight for decades, man. There's nobody that's been in the trenches longer than him. And for him to come out and be on our side, I mean, he always has been our side, but for him to understand that he's taken risks, obviously, for himself and his family, and standing
Sure.
up for what he believes in, and so he's on the right track. Yeah, I wish it could be faster. I wish it could be better, but I'm an optimist. I think things are moving. People are being educated, right? People's eyes are being opened. One of I think it was Beyond Meat or whatever those silly companies are that are the fake
Right.
meat. I saw last week where their market cap, has fallen to like 1% of what it started out to be. It's pennies on the dollar, and nobody wants that
Uh-huh.
stuff. And just, I don't know if you've ever looked at the label of that crap. It starts out with a molecule from a piece of red meat, and then they put it in a petri dish and they have to add antibiotics to it to keep it alive, number one. Then they add all these synthetic growth hormones to make it grow. So that's when you're eating this fake meat, it starts out as this one cell of protein, and then they add antibiotics and synthetic growth hormones to turn it into, I mean, you can't make this stuff up, how bad it is for you.
Yeah. Oh, but it's been decades, and it was different a little bit back then. But for a while there, partially because of kind of naive and uninformed environmentalist and pro animal, humane animal
Right.
ideas and ideals that I have and had. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
I went vegetarian for a number of years, a couple of decades ago,
Mm-hmm.
and switched out of that for health reasons. But
Yeah.
I would eat some of that Beyond Meat stuff, and just quickly glancing out this on just searching for it. It's like, okay, a blend of pea protein, expeller pressed canola oil, which you got
Mm-hmm.
your seed oils in there, coconut oil. Okay,
Yep.
so they're trying to replicate the the texture and the flavor, but they've got to do that with. I've heard things about integrating mushrooms or funguses into that and stuff, but a lot of times in those things, in order to to give them that, or to give them the flavor, or to give them the shelf life, they have to put a lot of additives into them.
Of course.
That
Yeah.
okay, you're not eating meat, as if that's face value bad anyway. But okay, so you're not going to eat your meat, but then it's a very processed system of creating the stuff, and then you hear about Frankenstein monster food stuff or the
Sure.
3D printed food stuff, and or who knows, when it comes to, science will fix this.
Yeah.
I don't even know all things about it, but you're getting into when they talk about the um, the RNA or the modified DNA stuff
mRNA.
for
Yeah.
meat,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
mRNA. That's
Sure.
a whole nother rabbit hole of, okay, we're going to have healthy meat, but it's going to be, again, industrious in a way where we're going to sort of like putting pesticides. Well, we're going to make meat that has pesticides in it that
Sure.
stave off viruses and
Sure.
infections and stuff. And it's like,
Don't you
okay,
want that? Yeah, don't you want that? We can put your vaccine right in your food supply, and then we can mass produce it. We can produce it cheaply and easily, and it's all a part of the control grid. That's
uh-huh,
why. And just a quick education to people: the reason why the cattle industry is still relatively independent is because I'm just going to use a quick scenario. You can put all the chickens in the United States in a few counties in Texas because you can put 120,000 birds. I know this from a fact because they were in our backyard in Iowa down the road. So you could put all the chickens in the country in a few counties. You could put all the pigs in the country in a quadrant of the state of Texas, and again put them inside, concentrate them. But it's very, very difficult to do that with cows because the first stage of their life are these cows that run out. Again, like I said, they can utilize this grass, which covers 70% of the arable land in America. They can turn that into meat and milk, and so it requires a ton of land, right? Which requires a lot of infrastructure and capital. And then unfortunately, they have captured the feeding part of that, and that's where this concentration comes in, where they bring all these cattle at the end of life into these huge CAFOs, confinement operations that are concentrated, and that's where that bottleneck of control comes in, and that's where the grid of processing comes in and takes control of those cattle as well. But anyway, we still do have these independent ranchers around the country, and that's what we're trying to save, because if we can save them, just keep them healthy and independent, then we can still have access to that food supply, which is the best. And it's also the most environmentally friendly thing that can be done to that land. They've tried to demonize cattle in so many
uh-huh.
ways and say that they're producing all this greenhouse gas. That's ridiculous because, again, if you leave that cow on its pasture, you don't haul it to the feedlot, you don't haul corn to it, you leave it right where it's at. That's environmentally neutral. And then she eats this grass and produces fertilizer. It's the most. Go visit a cattle ranch if you're worried about environmentalism.
Yeah.
Don't drive to one of those big huge feedlots that you can smell 10 miles away. That's not really the model we want to talk about. But most cattle are on independent ranchers. Those are the ones to look at. It's a beautiful thing. Like you said, everybody will want to retire next to that or right on that
Oh,
because it's
it it
wonderful.
it taps into a deep state of human
Oh yeah,
nature that is happy and working the land and
sure.
connected
Hmm.
relationships with nature and animals and other humans. And
Right.
so I imagine, RFK and other good folks trying to pierce the propaganda of the attack on our food systems and the money driven angle of all that. I mean, I could almost say like the deep state industrial complex that we have, where it's food and farm and all this stuff mixed in, and
Yep.
it's science.
Yep.
So when we talk about the food pyramid here, I imagine you can do the very best you can to change a system, but it's so big and deep, it'll take a long time to
Yeah.
turn that ship.
Right.
In October, I was just reading about how this past October, the Trump administration, with partnership between Secretary Brooke Rollins and the USDA, Doug Burgum and the Department of Interior, and RFK Jr., obviously, they rescinded a Biden era public lands rule.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that was to like put fields into fallow or have them have conservation leases.
Right.
They'll pay big money. They'll pay you to just
Oh
have
yeah.
your field
Yeah.
sit.
Yeah.
Like, where does that money come from and what does that go to? That's, man,
Right.
an expense.
Yeah.
Anyway, so it adjusts the conservation leases over 245 million acres of BLM land. So it
Right.
restores multi-use priority. It opens permit pathways,
Yeah.
clears red tape so that grazers and ranchers can
Sure.
utilize land that people. So I grew up with this kind of a trope that, like, and there's the propaganda over, cow farts and the greenhouse gas and all that stuff.
Right.
Or like done improperly, cattle just trample land or hover
Yeah.
around limited water
Uh-huh.
sources and muck
Right.
it up and
Right.
all this downstream waste. That's ranching gone wrong. But there's
Right.
ranching done well, which is most of
Right.
it, which is building
Yes.
up that soil.
Yep.
Anyway, so politically things are stepping in the right direction, perhaps.
They are. I think so, because we have less grazing lands than we used to, and some of that you mentioned through this government intervention, but we also, through economic incentives, remember back to the incentives to grow corn and soybeans. So we have a lot of, let's just take the Dakotas, for example, that used to be primarily in grass or what we call small grains, are now in corn and soybeans because the incentive is there for them to grow these crops. Well, if we just let the marketplace take its place, and a lot of those corn and soybean acres are not profitable anymore, and you hear stories, if you look it up, there's not record, but lots higher level of bankruptcies the last 2 years than the previous 5. So those systems aren't working. My point is, if we let nature take its course, that land should go back to pasture. I mean, because cattle are now at a record low number of inventory, record high prices. And so, I'm a free market guy. Unfortunately, we have this crony capitalism that screws things up, but we can get back. We can, people throw around the term, and it's a large term. We do need twice as many cows as we have in this country. And that's a big, big ask, but it's totally possible. We need to take this high productive land, all the land, but especially this high productive land, and put cattle on it. And then and it's going to be fought against, because then that doesn't require a big $1 million tractor. It doesn't require synthetic inputs. It doesn't require all this capital. It's actually lower capital input, but it's producing the highest value off of that land. So that's what needs to happen. And it's happening. It's just going to take a while.
Yeah, it can rebuild the soil, and then it's going to take years to rebuild America's herd.
Sure.
And so we talk about moving industry and things back to America first. And so that idea, it's like, okay, yeah, sure. It's like industrial, manufacturing and sources of minerals and important things. I get it. We need to do that with food as well. We need local source, decentralized, broad-based. We need to grow America's herd and get people eating well. And so on the other side of that, good movements and incentives there. But then I'll hear, the administration celebrate a big deal, a trade deal with Argentina, say, for Argentina cattle or Brazilian cattle.
Right.
Now, granted, they ranch themselves, and it's international trade deal stuff. But things like that, those big deals that are made for political reasons or otherwise, they can also hurt, say, ranchers in Texas, where it's like, hey, we have ranches here in Texas. We don't need the big deals with Argentina or Brazil. Let's build it here.
Exactly right. And but just leave us alone, stop regulating us, because it's one thing. We don't need to import. This will shock people, and it shocked me. I'm pretty educated, but we've been a net importer of food for the last half a decade. I mean, it's frightening to think that we have all these resources and all this access to all this great land, which is all true, but yet we're importing more food than we export. It's just crazy. And so, we have the ability. There's feedlots that are sitting empty. There's land that's sitting empty that should have cattle on them. And the fences, I drive from Texas back to our farm in Iowa, and you just don't see many cows anymore. And you drive by this open land, and that's what's great about a cow. You just put up some fence and water, and she's out there just doing her thing, day in and day out. And it doesn't, it's sad, but you're right. And what a better way to economically impact the future than to raise our own food for us, right? Create jobs, good paying jobs, jobs that are fulfilling. I mean, you mentioned it. What was your favorite memory as a kid? Was being on the farm. So these are great places for people to be. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, kids don't know they're working when their work feels connected relationship wise with family, with play, with experiences. And at the end of the day, maybe you're just smoked, but you feel such a connected purpose in life.
Sure.
I mean, it's good for kids and it's good for everybody, but I mean, it's part of our
It
heritage.
is.
It's our national
It
heritage.
is. It's good for the soul, and every,
Yeah.
and men especially, but everybody included, when you get done at the end of the day and you can point back or sit down and say, I did this today. I accomplished, I went out and I mowed this pasture. I helped move these cows to a new paddock. I got saddled a horse. I did these, when you accomplish something, that's very fulfilling. And when you work with those animals and on that farm, you get fresh air, you get sunlight, you get to eat good. I mean, it's real. No wonder they've attacked that. And people want to say, well, who's they? Well, it's the same people that created the fiat money system, and they're real, right, Fritz?
Yeah.
They're actually real things that have happened, and we need to recognize it and then move forward together in solutions.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
case in point, Texas Slim had told a quick story about, Jimmy Dean. People know
Yeah.
Jimmy Dean
Sure.
sausages and all that. And
Yep.
honestly, roots in a solid American business, looking at
Yep.
quality and getting
Yep.
food out there. And yeah, they had a brand, but
Yep.
Jimmy Dean was a real guy who played music
Oh,
and
yeah.
was a rancher. Now they got bought out by Tyson, I think maybe, and then Tyson
Yep.
got bought out by some Chinese company.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm not sure. I mean, maybe they are, but Jimmy Dean, owned by some Chinese company, you just hope they're sourcing the meat the same. But why would they? Because they're looking at bottom line.
Yeah, there's no incentive. And Jimmy Dean, I mean, I remember, we were in the hog business, as I said, and there was a Jimmy Dean hog buying station and a sausage factory, and he was from Slim's area, from West Texas, like you said, an entertainer and a singer, and he filled a niche. And what he did is he went and bought sows, which are the female hogs that had their good life, and he bought them, ground them up, added some special seasoning, and created this kick-ass sausage. And so he filled a gap. But yeah, it got bought out by Hormel and then by Smithfield, and so it's been passed on. And yeah, and so that's what happens. But yeah, the standards are shot. There's nothing there but the name, which unfortunately doesn't mean much. So
yeah. It's a great brand, but source wise now it's like, oh, did we lose Jimmy Dean?
Yeah.
Thinking quick aside back to the heritage and the feel you get running a ranch. I get to rambling, I know, but I've told this story to Tom and you had inquired before, but yeah. So my own family a few generations ago basically lost the ranch leading up to World War II, but Great Depression era stuff. But my family had come from Germany and down through Austria and Ukraine, and then gotten to America through Ellis Island. And they did that for reasons partially unknown, but they wanted to be Americans. And when they got to America, they just considered themselves Americans. They made a beeline from Ellis Island in New York straight out to Nebraska. And they ended up settling around west of Lincoln, kind of, I think near Kearney.
Yeah, sure. I know that well. Yeah.
I think it's spelled like Kearney.
It is. Kearney, yeah, it's Kearney. It looks like Kearney, but it's Kearney. Yes, sir.
Kearney, Nebraska. So, and they started out working on other ranches, learning cows and horses, buying some cows, owning a herd, owning a few different pastures and herds, and then building a cattle auction. And they got connected economically to cattle auctions and a community of ranches.
Sure.
And they were just going gangbusters, good businessmen, smart people. And Great Depression era, basically money went bad, debts were called in, the banks were making calls. And my family was basically, the story we like to tell that was passed down was that like great grandpa was good on all his debts. And that some people fled town and left and were just like, freaking out and all this stuff, or didn't pay. And that great grandpa paid off all the debts he had, even from a handshake with his neighbor.
Yeah.
He just knew what was right. And after paying off all the debts, they were down to nothing.
Wow.
And that it's not that the kids didn't still know how to ranch and tried their hand at that in smaller ways here and there. But in my direct lineage, we just got away from ranching. And we still had family friends that ranched, and that's where I would go to work on some ranches sometimes as a kid to learn. Yeah. Great experience and all that. But down in there is that kernel of personal heritage, American cultural heritage, and just the cowboy way through and through, the culture.
Oh, yeah.
was
Oh yeah.
solid.
Yeah.
So we
Absolutely.
miss that. It's what's sorely lacking in kind of the void in America's soul is that
Yeah.
kind of a heritage of purpose.
Yep.
You know, kids
It
these days
is.
don't always know what to do in their life, or I don't know
Right.
what means anything. But I tell you, ranching and farming, there you go. That's a fix.
Yeah. Yeah. It is. It's totally in the soul. It's in my soul. And my family, my parents both grew up in the Depression. They were kids, teenagers, and so they have some stories. Of course, they never, ever, 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 ever mentioned going hungry, which there's a profound thought, right? Even in the worst of the worst, they always had plenty
You
to eat
had your
because
food.
they were on a farm.
Uh-huh.
I asked my grandparents. I did a grandparent project with my dad's mother. She was alive when I was in high school, and it's just fascinating to talk to her about the Depression. And again, she never mentioned lacking anything. She just said, well, we had to put our car up on blocks, which they didn't want the tires to deteriorate. And grandpa had to go to town and work a little bit, but they survived. Didn't have to sell any land. And then I lived through the 80s. That was a terrible crisis with land. That's the Carter era when the interest rates went to 20% and land
Mm,
prices had been inflated. And so then they crashed. So when you have lower land prices and then high interest rates, it wiped out a lot of people. And then I went through the hog crisis crash, wiped us out financially. We were able to survive because I bought some land privately from a guy and he stuck with me. I had a good attorney, but yeah, they collapsed the hog prices and they drove out 80 to 90% of the independent hog producers by design. And then
mm.
guess who comes in and swoops in and controls the hog, the pork industry. So that's been consolidated for what now, almost 40 years, or 25 years. It was in the early 2000s on that. But yeah, we've been through these boom and busts, and we're going to go through another one here. I think they've blown this bubble up on. I mean, land has gone up 300% literally in the last 10 years, which is unsustainable. And so watch out, and everybody, like we said, go shake a rancher's hand, find out your food supply because we're in strange times, and they're trying
Right.
to capture the cattle industry as well. So
Yeah, if you think about how people survived, back in the Great Depression, it's more like 90% of the people lived in very rural farming type communities. And
right,
now
right.
80-90% of people live in very urban areas.
Oh
So you
yeah,
could have a very just similar crisis, if you will, for whatever
yeah,
reason.
yeah.
I would hate to be stuck in a city. And
Oh
meanwhile,
yeah,
all of this could be swirling around and somebody out on a farm or ranch. Yeah, they'll be impacted in ways, but you're
yeah,
living off the land. You have your water, your food on the hoof, your food growing in
right,
the ground.
yeah,
You want to nestle yourself up into that sustainable lifestyle, I would say. And when
right.
things do crash like that or get bad, here swoops in big money to gobble it up, and it just
Sure,
centralizes it again. And then, if
imagine
you
that.
have the
Yeah,
time,
yeah.
you'd mentioned, or I think there's a documentary called "We're Here," and that's in the Panhandle. There was a big fire. Was it you who'd
Right.
brought up the "We Are Here" documentary and
It
how that connects
it
to things
wasn't
going
me,
on?
but it wasn't me, but I was working with Slim then, and we're coming up on literally this following week is the 2-year anniversary, and I know it because of, remember I said I'm going out to Montana. When I was there 2 years ago at the sale, we purchased a bull. Better Fed Foods did, and donated the proceeds to. We sold the bull again and donated the proceeds to the Texas wildfire relief. And Slim was right in the middle of that. There's that movie has been made to show. It's a fascinating story. It's a great watch. It's easy to as far as simple to watch and go through, but it's profound, and it's another one of those land grabs. I mean, they burned up all this land, and Slim was right there with our foundation. We provided some A+ to fly on to help the soil restored and seed and feed, and that's what that ranching mentality is. Coming together and helping neighbors. That's what's important. But yeah, this wildfire burned, I don't know the number of acres. It was the largest wildfire in the history of Texas, and they burned down a bunch of land, and a lot of that's not come back, and it's now going to have data centers and water capture on it. So yeah, another grab.
Yeah, and you hate to see, no good emergency goes um,
Yeah,
without taking its
waste.
advantage. I can't remember the quote, but let
Yeah,
no good emergency go to waste.
go to waste. Right.
But
Yeah, definitely.
things like that happen, and whether they're just natural or you can start to question things about it, but like those are opportunities for the crony capitalist
Yep.
angle to like, hey, uh, bubbles and pops, you can swoop things up and consolidate your
Sure.
holdings on the cheap.
Yep.
Meanwhile, what's a local rancher going to do when it's like, well, the harvest is gone?
Yeah.
You're kind of stuck. You've through the subsidies or otherwise, like you're in debt.
Yeah.
And you may have the land, but you can't work it. You don't have the capital,
Yeah.
and you can get yourself in a corner.
Well, think
And
about this. Think about this opportunity: all-time high price land, all-time highest price cattle, and these guys are aging out. The average age of the rancher is in the upper 60s. So there's a few younger guys. So let's say these other guys are in their 70s, maybe even 80s. It's a lot of people would say, "Man, this is the time to get out." You need to retire. You can
mm,
cash out at the high price, but it's pretty. Uh, the incentives are there, unfortunately,
mm,
and that's why a lot of this is happening. We're not rebuilding the cow herd. I've watched the cycle for decades, and normally we have high prices, and then that encourages people to save more heifers and rebuild the herd. That's not happening, Fritz. I mean, because
mm.
people are continuing to sell out, and the big boys are like going, okay, yeah, this is our time to just crash it, and then we'll come in and save it, save it. And so
You can
we're in that.
almost see it coming. Yeah,
You can, yeah. Hmm.
yeah. I'm I'm quasi braced for it in a way. Maybe it's purely economic, like monetary reasons.
Yeah,
Which, with fiat, I mean, how do they maintain that spinning up?
yeah,
Other than printing the money and just
yeah,
floating the numbers,
yeah.
regardless of the monetary debasement, those chickens will come home to roost.
Oh yeah,
Now, if that alone doesn't just naturally just do it, maybe steadily, but ultimately is I don't know how you avoid it. On the other hand, there's always like the emergency, I mean, I don't know. Yeah. Pick your operation off the shelf. There can always
yeah,
be some emergency. Now,
sure,
governments can easily just target food systems. Tom mentioned this,
yeah,
and maybe you have a sense of the idea that governments and the tournament of power and the politics of it all and stuff, governments often go after food and after food systems. Now, it could be
sure,
to at one level of government, I mentioned, like, okay, you want it to be clean and healthy, sanitary and supported, and you want to help. Government's here to help. But on the other hand, there's so many opportunities for core control over people. When you can control
sure,
food or food supply chains, it's profitable, but
sure.
also there could be darker reasons for it too. I just hate to think about. Maybe not under this administration. I don't know. It's hard to know what to trust. At the
It
same
is.
time, you do see all over all the time governments that will go straight after the food
Yep.
to keep it from being decentralized or out of control. They having it
Sure.
centralized and under control on a money spigot
Oh
is
yeah.
more straightforward.
Yeah. Well, Kissinger said in the 70s, control the food, control the people, and he was right. And we have an average of about a 3-day food supply in the grocery stores, and so imagine what that looks like if we had a disaster. It would it would not look good. And so
Yeah.
yeah, there's control grids, but COVID woke a lot of people up. I mean, I didn't even
Right.
mention we've been homeschooling our kids for now 27 years,
Oh
and
wow.
my wife's been in the vaccine awareness for 25 years. So that when COVID happened, I knew who RFK was, I knew who Fauci was, and so it didn't
Uh,
surprise us. What surprised us was how people behaved. But on a positive standpoint, Fritz, it woke a lot of people up, and
yeah.
they had this plan. I really believe this to keep us locked down for years. Get rid of our normal food supply. They had a plan and it didn't work, and so thank God it didn't. And let's remember what we've learned. We have learned that beef is good for you, and that's once you see some things, you can't unsee them about what they've done to us. And so I want to be positive that it woke up a lot of people. These stupid fake meat companies that were supposed to be great, they've crashed. So people are people are, let's hope and pray for the good of humanity to continue to wake up and push back and make a change, right?
Yeah, I think people are waking up. It certainly woke me up, and I have a lot of hope. I do, like you do, not just with Bitcoin, but with, like the what the Beef Initiative is doing, what El
Yeah.
Salvador is working towards. People are going to see what works, and they're going to compare
Yeah.
that to what's not working, and
Right.
you're going to have a choice. So, like,
Yeah.
start to choose better things. And
Right.
so I think things are going to get better. And you can say, well, but so much is bad. Okay, yes, step by step. You know what was
Right.
really bad was not too many
Yeah.
years ago in the depths of COVID. How many people kind of got caught up in that and then kind of stuck? And to this day, some people, there's a joke I think Joe Rogan might have said. It makes me think of Dr. Malone and all that. But it's like
Right.
we lost a lot of people to COVID, and most of them are still alive. And there are people that are just like stuck and deranged in a very negative,
Oh yeah.
toxic doomer mindset. And so, like,
Yeah.
if you're worried about cow farts, the next logical step would be all the human farts based on the garbage they eat. Shouldn't we
Right.
just cull humans? I mean,
Oh
it's a
yeah.
completely anti-human direction to go.
It is.
What's the actual solution here? Well, it'd be decentralized ranching and what we're talking about here. Now, don't ever forget what we fell for in COVID and how, yes, some people, a lot of people didn't know, not knowing any better. You fall hook, line, and sinker for a lot of that. Some people just got stuck,
Yeah.
but many more of us can look back on that and, in a way, just be like, never again. In
Right.
fact, because of that,
Yep.
we are deliberately doing
Oh
the
yeah.
other thing.
Yeah. Thank
So,
God. Yeah. Yeah. What the enemy intended for evil, God uses for good. I seriously believe that. They always overplay their hand, and the enemy being Satan. I mean, I'm a Christian. It's real. The Satan. He's a copycat. He can't come up with anything creatively. So he came up with this idea of control, and he didn't. He never. They always underestimate the power of people to see through their fake story, and we've seen through it, like right you said. And some people haven't, they just don't wake up, that whatever. But a lot of people have. I mean, to a fault, everybody I talk to has a COVID story, right? That's like, oh well, I used to do this, whether it's school, whether it's the medical system, whether it's food, whether it's money. They all, a lot of times they point back to COVID and say, yeah, that changed my perspective, and that was a good thing. It woke people up. So
yeah. Yeah. Now with clean eyes, we shall see. And
yeah.
I feel with that, I feel a lot of hope. Not that it's not going to take a lot of time and effort and work, but you,
Right.
amongst many in the Beef Initiative and elsewhere generally, are all doing the good, healthy, positive, right thing. It's super exciting to see. So I can't wait to see how it progresses, to see El Salvador grow its herd, to see the Beef Initiative and beef.com and all that get ranchers connected with consumers and the market generally, create the food supply chain as well as a fair market and
Right.
quality food getting into people's diet, and just
Yeah.
fix the food, fix the world. And then economically, Bitcoin can supplement that.
Yep.
But man, so much is about food. So it's
Yeah.
been an amazing conversation. I really appreciate everything you've been sharing with me. I want to make sure we haven't missed anything you wanted to talk about in terms of, we've gotten into super big picture, which is
Hmm.
great, down to the technical aspects of it.
Yep.
Is there anything that I've missed that you'd like to make sure we talk about?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think we covered it. I really want to thank you for giving us this platform and giving me those kind words, because we're out here just, trying to do what we can do. And it's people like you that, help us get the message out. And just like we've talked about, please, people, get involved, do something today. You eat every day, multiple times a day. That's an act, that's a choice you make. That's an act of, could be sovereignty. So think about it. It's every time you eat, when you put that fork to your mouth, think about how you can impact change, because you really can, by where you eat and who you buy your food from. So that's my parting message. Get involved, be positive, be the change yourself. So thanks, Fritz. I appreciate your time.
Absolutely. You can only vote so much harder or get caught up in the politics, but
Yeah,
everybody eats. So you
yeah,
can eat better, and families
absolutely.
need good food. Ranchers need capital and market
Yeah.
connection. So
Yeah, we need each other. Better together. That's one of my parting messages. So let's do it.
awesome. Super excited to see what comes. You're doing great work. I really respect the work that you, Tom, Texas Slim, and the others are really doing. And yeah, get to beef.com, get to beefmaps.com, and connect with your local rancher, get your good food. If you're looking at capital, and what I would like to do is retire on a ranch someday.
Yep.
Connect with these guys and consider your options, because you can't just sustain your soul through the finances.
No.
Bitcoin being better money. Yes, that certainly doesn't hurt. But if you connect it to your food and your diet, and your mental health and your spirit, you've solved more than half the problem. So
Absolutely.
connect with these guys. And it's been awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks
Fritz.
again.
Thank you for your time.
Yep. Thanks, Steve. We'll see you down the road, perhaps in El Salvador, and everybody else. Thanks for joining. And till next